There's a unique kind of silence that only exists on the American interstate after midnight. It's a silence that presses in on you, a heavy blanket woven from the drone of the engine, the whisper of wind against steel, and the vast, sleeping emptiness of the world outside your windows. For the men and women who pilot these 70,000-pound machines through the dark, this solitude is a companion. It can be a comfort. But sometimes that silence is broken. Sometimes the vast emptiness isn't empty at all, and the person you become in those moments, the choices you make when the familiar rhythm of the road is shattered by raw, primal fear, that's a story the highway keeps forever. We see them every day, these titans of the asphalt, and we rarely give them a second thought. They are the circulatory system of the nation, the lifeblood of commerce. But we forget that inside every cab is a human being. A person who is often alone, hundreds of miles from home, in places where the veil between civilization and chaos is terrifyingly thin. They have stories. Stories that don't make the evening news. Stories whispered over crackling CB radios at 3 a.m. Tales of phantom lights, of predators who hunt at desolate rest stops, and of disappearances so complete they defy all logic. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on that world. We're going to share 5 true, meticulously researched accounts of terror on the open road. These aren't ghost stories. They are far more terrifying, because they are real. They are about the monsters that walk among us, who see the isolation of a long-haul trucker not as a job requirement, but as an opportunity. So, lock your doors, check your mirrors, and join us for a journey down the darkest highways in America. The first story begins on a road so empty they call it the loneliest in the nation. It's here that a veteran driver named Martin Owens discovered he was not alone, and in doing so, vanished from the face of the earth. Section 1. Phantom Headlights. The vanishing of Martin Owens. Interstate 50 through Nevada isn't just a road, it's a test of endurance. A 400-mile stretch of asphalt cutting through an ocean of sagebrush and alkali flats, where the distance between towns is measured in hours, not miles. It's nicknamed the loneliest road in America for a reason. For Martin Owens, a 41-year-old veteran trucker, this desolation was his office. He preferred the cool, quiet nights, the sparse traffic, the feeling of being the only soul awake under a canopy of stars so bright they seemed to press down on the desert floor. He'd been driving the route between Salt Lake City and Sacramento for nearly 20 years. He knew its every curve, every dip, every place a coyote might dart across the road. But on the moonlit night of September 17th, 1994, the road he knew so well held a secret. A predator that was hunting in the dark. At 1:15 a.m., everything was routine. Owens checked in with his dispatcher from a rest stop near Ely. His blue Peterbilt, pulling a reefer trailer of produce, was running like a dream. He was on schedule, the night was clear, and the world was quiet. An hour and a half later, another trucker, Dale Howell, passed Owens heading in the opposite direction. They exchanged the familiar flash of headlights, a silent greeting between nights of the road. Howell would later state that nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Just Marty rolling west, another night, another run. That was the last time anyone who knew him saw Martin Owens alive. The last confirmed sighting came at 3:07 a.m. from the single traffic camera on that long stretch of highway. The footage shows the Peterbilt cruising at a steady speed, its lights on, a picture of normalcy. 36 minutes later, the normalcy shattered. The emergency channel, channel 19 on the CB radio, crackled to life. It was Owens's voice, but stripped of its usual calm. It was tight, agitated. "I'm being followed," he said, his words cutting through the static. "By a vehicle with these bright headlights. They've been on my bumper for 20 minutes. Multiple truckers heard the call. They pictured it instantly. The blinding glare in the mirrors erasing the road, erasing everything but the pressure of the vehicle behind. It's a dangerous game of intimidation some four-wheelers play, but this felt different. They're riding my bumper. Can't see anything but those damn lights. Owens's voice crackled again. Whoever you are, back off. Seasoned drivers offered advice. Pull over at the next rest area, just 12 miles ahead. Let them pass. Don't engage. Yeah, roger that, Owens acknowledged, his voice strained. I'll do exactly that. 3 minutes. That's how long the fragile sense of a plan lasted. At 3:46 a.m., Owens was back on the radio, but the agitation was gone, replaced by pure panic. They're trying to run me off the road. Oh, God, they're coming alongside me now. The transmission wasn't cut off by static. It just stopped. An abrupt, chilling silence. Two other truckers about 30 miles behind Owens's last known position reported seeing something strange on the horizon. A pair of headlights swerving violently, then a brief, bright flash of light in the distance, like a transformer blowing. By the time they reached the area, 15 agonizing minutes later, there was nothing. No skid marks, no broken glass, no sign of an accident. Martin Owens and his 70,000-pound tractor trailer had vanished into the thin desert air. The search that followed was one of the largest in Nevada's history. Highway patrol retraced the route. Helicopters scanned the vast, unforgiving terrain. But how does an 18-wheeler simply disappear? The first clue came 2 days later. Investigators found tire tracks matching Owens's rig, leading off the highway onto a disused maintenance road. The tracks went on for 7 miles into the desert, ending in a wide, flat basin. And then nothing. The tracks just stopped, as if the truck had been plucked from the earth by an invisible hand. There was no truck, no trailer, no cargo, and no Martin Owens. The case spiraled into a vortex of dead ends. Robbery? Unlikely. 3 weeks after he vanished, a hiker found Owens's wallet 30 miles north of where the tracks ended. It was full of cash, credit cards, his license. Everything was there. The theories grew wilder. An elaborate insurance scam? But Owens was financially stable, happily married, a new grandfather who doted on his family. He had no reason to run. 2 months later, a road crew found his CB radio, damaged but identifiable in a dry creek bed miles from the highway. Forensic analysis found fingerprints, but they matched no one in any database. The story took on a life of its own. Other truckers came forward with their own unsettling tales from that same stretch of I-50. Stories of being aggressively tailed by vehicles with unusually bright lights, of being forced off the road by an unmarked white van. A pattern began to emerge, one of predatory behavior targeting the isolated. In January 1995, a flicker of hope. Reno police arrested a trio of men connected to a sophisticated cargo theft ring. During interrogation, one of the suspects let something slip, muttering about the trucker job that went bad out on 50. When detectives pressed him, he immediately lawyered up. Before he could be formally charged in connection with Owens's disappearance, he was found dead in his cell. The official cause was suicide, and with him, any potential answers died too. The case went cold, but it never went away. It became a legend, a cautionary tale for every driver braving the loneliest road. A partial VIN plate from Owens's truck, found in 2006 near a remote, abandoned mine. A grainy Polaroid photo, left at a diner in 2012 by a strange man, showing a blue Peterbilt, just like Owens's, parked inside a large, hangar-like structure. Each clue only deepened the mystery, raising more questions than it answered. How do you hide an 18-wheeler, and why go to such lengths? The disappearance of Martin Owens isn't just a missing person case. It's a gaping wound in the psyche of the American trucker. It's a chilling reminder that on the loneliest roads under the vast, silent desert sky, you can vanish without a trace, and the only witnesses are the stars and the phantom headlights in your rearview mirror. Section 2. Dead Man's Curve, the Collector of Cactus Creek. There are places on the American map that feel forgotten by time, liminal spaces where the rules of the civilized world seem to thin. The Cactus Creek Rest Area, a lonely patch of asphalt carved out of the stark, red rock landscape of southern Utah's Highway 91, is one of those places. It's a necessary stop for truckers, a place to catch a few hours of sleep before pushing on. But for a time, it became something else. It became a hunting ground, and the predator who stalked its lonely parking lot was not a creature of instinct, but a monster of intellect, a man who saw human beings as subjects in a twisted, fatal experiment. His first subject was Thomas Malone. On a rainy Tuesday in October 1998, Malone, a 38-year-old trucker known for his clockwork reliability, pulled his distinctive red Kenworth into Cactus Creek. Security footage shows him pulling in at 11:37 p.m. By morning, the truck hadn't moved. The driver's door was slightly ajar, the engine cold. Inside, investigators found a scene of unsettling normalcy. Malone's logbook was meticulously filled out. His wallet, with $174 in cash, sat untouched on the passenger seat. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, nothing to suggest foul play. It was as if Thomas Malone had simply stepped out of his truck and evaporated into the desert air. For 6 weeks, his disappearance was an isolated, baffling mystery. Then, Darlene Wilcox vanished from the very same spot. Wilcox, 42, was one of the few female long-haul drivers on the western routes at the time, and was known for being exceptionally cautious. She had a ritual. Every time she stopped for the night, she would call her sister, tell her the exact location, and when she planned to leave. On December 9th, she made that call from Cactus Creek at 12:08 a.m. She mentioned seeing only one other vehicle, a dark sedan, parked at the far end of the lot. She promised to call again at dawn. The call never came. When a trooper arrived, the scene was a chilling echo of Malone's disappearance. Her blue Peterbilt was locked, her purse stowed in its usual spot. But this time there was a ghost on the videotape. The rest area's grainy security footage held the key. At 2:17 a.m., a figure is seen approaching Wilcox's truck. A man of average height, wearing a dark cap that obscures his features. He walks directly to her driver's side door and knocks. After a moment, the door opens. There's a brief interaction, too distant to discern words. Then the unthinkable happens. Darlene Wilcox, the hyper-vigilant driver, climbs down from her cab and calmly walks away with the stranger, disappearing beyond the camera's view. Neither of them ever returns. The dark sedan she mentioned to her sister was gone by morning. 2 experienced truckers vanished from the same remote location. The FBI was called in. The case was now being treated as a potential serial abduction. A warning went out across the trucking channels. Stay away from Cactus Creek. The break came not from a witness, but from the land itself. In March 1999, after a flash flood, a road crew found a weathered wallet wedged between rocks in a dry wash, 30 miles from the rest stop. Inside was Thomas Malone's driver's license. The subsequent search of the area yielded more: a woman's work boot, the type Darlene Wilcox wore, and a small, leather-bound notebook that turned the investigators' blood cold. Inside was a list of names. 2 of them were Thomas Malone and Darlene Wilcox. 3 other names on the list had been neatly crossed out. A frantic search began to identify the other names. 2, Jordan Hayes and Miguel Sanchez, were truckers who had been reported missing in 1997 from different states in the Southwest. Their cases had never been linked. The 3rd crossed-out name, Franklin Weisfer, was not in any missing persons database. When investigators tracked him down, he was very much alive, and he had a story. In July 1997, at Cactus Creek, a man claiming to be a stranded motorist had tried to get him to open his door. Something about the man's educated, formal way of speaking had set Weber on edge. He refused. The stranger grew agitated, threatening to add him to the collection before another truck pulled in and scared him off. Weber's description of the man perfectly matched the figure on the security tape. The predator had been hunting this stretch of highway for years. The investigation led them into the mountains surrounding Cactus Creek, a landscape riddled with dozens of abandoned mines from the 1800s. In one of these dark, forgotten shafts, a hiker made a grisly discovery. Human remains later confirmed to be Thomas Malone. He had not died quickly. The evidence suggested weeks of captivity, what the medical examiner termed systematic trauma. As investigators delved deeper into the labyrinth of mines, they found the killer's lair. A series of crude cells fashioned from mining chambers. One held personal items belonging to Darlene Wilcox. In the deepest chamber, they found his trophy room. Logbooks, keys, and personal effects from all 4 victims. The walls were covered with surveillance photos of truckers, stalked at rest stops, and a journal. The journal was the most chilling discovery of all. Written in a clinical, almost academic language, it detailed the abductions and captivity. The writer referred to his victims not by name but by number, as if they were lab rats. He chronicled their responses to isolation, their psychological breaking points, their threshold for privation. It was a research log for an experiment in despair. Despite this wealth of evidence, the killer remained a ghost. Until a routine traffic stop in Cedar City, Utah, snared a 45-year-old former psychology professor named Edward Crane. In his car, police found fake IDs, a police scanner, and detailed maps of remote rest areas. A search of his home revealed the smoking gun, a hidden room filled with more surveillance photos and journals, continuing the cold observations found in the mine. When confronted, Crane showed no remorse. They were perfect subjects, he reportedly told investigators. Isolated, self-sufficient, accustomed to discomfort. I wanted to see how long they would maintain hope in a hopeless situation. After his academic career imploded due to ethically monstrous research proposals, he had decided to continue his work without institutional constraints. His method was chillingly simple. He would approach truckers with a plausible story, gain their trust, and then incapacitate them with a concealed stun gun. He exploited the very culture of mutual aid that truckers rely on, turning their best instincts into a fatal vulnerability. Edward Crane was a new kind of highway predator, one who didn't hunt for money or gratification, but for data. At Cactus Creek, which truckers now call Dead Man's Curve, a small memorial stands. It's a testament to the victims and a grim reminder that sometimes the most dangerous monsters aren't the ones who lurk in the shadows, but the ones who walk right up to your door and knock. Truck stops are the modern-day caravanserais, oases of light and fuel scattered along the vast, dark arteries of the American interstate. They are supposed to be safe havens, places of temporary community for the solitary nights of the road. But like any oasis, they can attract predators. And sometimes the most dangerous place isn't the miles of empty highway, but the supposed sanctuary at the end of it. On March 12, 2005, at the unassuming Blue Mountain Plaza in rural Pennsylvania, a veteran trucker named Ray Simmons discovered that the shadows between the sleeping giants of steel held a horror he could never have imagined. He was being watched, hunted by a predator who knew the rhythms of a trucker's life and used them as a weapon. Ray's routine was etched in stone, perfected over 23 years. Fuel up, grab a hot meal, check in with dispatch, sleep. At 9:42 p.m., security footage shows him leaving the plaza's diner, a styrofoam container of leftover meatloaf in hand. He walks back towards his white Freightliner parked at the far end of the lot, a spot chosen for its quiet. The camera tracks him until he disappears between two parked rigs. He never reappears. Ray Simmons simply vanished in the 50-foot blind spot between two trucks. The next morning, his dispatcher, Catherine Morris, knew something was wrong. Ray was military precise. When his truck's GPS showed it hadn't moved in over 12 hours, she called the police. The scene in the truck was a portrait of a life interrupted. The cab was locked. His logbook was open, noting his arrival time. His dinner leftovers sat uneaten on the passenger seat. Whatever happened, it happened in the few moments it took him to walk from the diner to his cab. 3 days later, the case took a sinister turn. A highway worker found Ray's wallet in a ditch 7 miles north of the truck stop. The cash and cards were all there, but something had been added. A single Polaroid photograph. It showed Ray unconscious, his hands bound with zip ties. The FBI was called in. A team specializing in crimes against transportation workers began poring over the security footage. They noticed something local police had missed. A dark SUV that had entered the plaza shortly after Ray circled the lot twice and then parked at the edge of the camera's range. It left 40 minutes after Ray was last seen. The lead was thin, a ghost vehicle in a sea of transient traffic. The investigation might have died there, if not for Ela Corbett. 13 days after Ray's disappearance, Corbett, another experienced trucker, pulled into the same Blue Mountain Plaza. She had a peculiar habit. Born from a minor hit-and-run years prior, she photographed her truck at every stop. That night, as she was snapping photos, she caught a flash of movement in the deep shadows beneath the trailer parked next to hers. At first, I thought it was a stray dog, she later told investigators, but then I realized it was a person crawling on their belly between the wheels. Corbett, a woman hardened by the road, didn't hesitate. She retreated to her cab, locked the doors, and called 911. The lurker was gone by the time police arrived, but Corbett's photographs taken just moments before provided the first clear image of the suspect. A man in dark clothing, wearing tactical gloves, and in his hand a telescoping rod with a wire loop at the end, like an animal catchpole. The hunter had been caught in a snapshot. Police released a composite sketch, and alerts went out to truck stops across the state. The case went cold again for nearly 2 months. Then, a single vehicle accident on a rural road 30 miles from the plaza changed everything. The driver, Howard Keegan, 42, had crashed into a tree. In his wrecked vehicle, officers found a disturbing collection. Zip ties identical to the ones in the Polaroid, a telescoping catch pole, syringes filled with a powerful sedative, and Ray Simmons's company ID badge. The investigation had its man. The search of property records led police to an abandoned dairy farm owned by Keegan's deceased uncle. There, in a converted milk house with reinforced doors and blacked-out windows, they found the answer to what had happened to Ray Simmons. The room was a purpose-built torture chamber. A metal-framed bed with restraints was bolted to the concrete floor. A drain was installed in the center. Forensic teams found blood and hair from multiple individuals, including Ray. On a workbench, notebooks filled with meticulous surveillance notes on dozens of truckers, their routes, schedules, and personal habits. Howard Keegan had been a trucker himself before losing his license. He had even worked as an overnight janitor at the Blue Mountain Plaza. He knew the routines, the blind spots, the moments of vulnerability. He was a predator who had studied his prey with academic rigor. His method was terrifyingly efficient. He would lie in wait in the darkest parts of the truck stop, using the catch pole to deliver an incapacitating injection from a distance, snatching his victims from the very threshold of their safe space. In a locked toolbox in his trunk, investigators found more Polaroids, dozens of them. They showed not just Ray, but 5 other men, all in similar states of unconsciousness. The photographs were his trophies. Keegan's home computer revealed an obsession with true crime, particularly killers who targeted travelers. He had been studying their methods, critiquing their mistakes. The case connected Keegan to at least 3 other unsolved disappearances of truckers across the region. The remains of Ray Simmons and 4 other victims were eventually found buried in shallow graves on the dairy farm property. Howard Keegan never stood trial. He took his own life in a secure medical facility, taking his twisted motivations with him to the grave. The case of the Route 219 stalker fundamentally changed the trucking industry. Security was enhanced, camera coverage expanded, and the buddy system became standard practice. But for the drivers who still traverse that stretch of Pennsylvania, the far end of the Blue Mountain Plaza parking lot will forever be known as the blind spot, a chilling reminder that the greatest dangers can lurk in the most familiar places, waiting for you to let your guard down just for a moment. Section 4. Signal lost. The imposter of deadfall. Canyon authority is a powerful thing. A uniform, a flashing light, a confident voice. These are symbols we are conditioned to trust, to obey. They represent order in a world of chaos, help in a moment of crisis. But what happens when that authority is a mask? When the symbols of safety are used as a lure by a predator? In the pre-dawn darkness of November 18, 2008, on a treacherous mountain highway in Montana, a 53-year-old trucker named Victor Ree found himself in the crosshairs of a man who had mastered this terrifying deception. His story is a chilling exploration of how our deepest instincts for compliance can be turned against us. Ree was navigating the winding, snow-covered roads of the Bitterroot Range, taking a lesser-used route, Highway 472, to avoid construction delays. An early winter storm was dumping heavy snow, and at 4:17 a.m., he radioed his dispatcher. Conditions were deteriorating, but he had chains on and was making good time. He expected to clear the notorious Deadfall Canyon before the worst of the storm hit. That was the last time anyone heard from him. When he failed to arrive in Missoula, his company tracked his truck's GPS. It had stopped moving at 5:30 a.m., right in the heart of Deadfall Canyon, a place known for treacherous conditions and zero cell reception. Given the weather, everyone assumed the most likely scenario. He'd either pulled over to wait out the storm or had a minor slide-off. But when search and rescue teams reached his truck the next day, the scene was eerily similar to other highway vanishings. The Kenworth was parked neatly in a turnout, doors locked, engine off. Inside, his wallet full of cash was in the console. His heavy winter jacket was still on the back of his seat. His cell phone was plugged into the charger. There were no signs of a struggle. It was another ghost truck. Boot prints in the snow led from the driver's door to the guardrail overlooking a steep wooded slope. And then they just stopped. An extensive search of the canyon below found nothing. The first hint that this wasn't a simple case of a driver wandering off came from another trucker, Janet Howell. She had been driving the same route in the opposite direction and had stopped at the very same turnout around 5 a.m. As she was securing her load, she saw Ree's truck pull in behind her. Then something else. Through the swirling snow, she saw a smaller vehicle, an SUV, pull in behind Ree's rig. She could just make out a flashing light on its roof. "I assumed it was road maintenance, or maybe a highway patrol car," she later said. "I didn't think much of it." She was focused on getting through the canyon herself, but her account raised a chilling question. No official vehicles had been dispatched to that area until hours later. If it wasn't a cop, who was it? 3 days later, the answer began to take shape. A Fish and Wildlife officer found a black Ford Explorer, partially hidden on a remote access road 12 miles from the canyon. It had been wiped clean of prints, its license plates removed. But inside, forensics found a dashboard-mounted light bar, the kind used in unmarked police vehicles. They found a police band radio scanner, and in the back they found zip ties, duct tape, a stun gun, and traces of blood that would later be matched to Victor Ree. The missing person case was now a full-blown abduction. The hunter had used the storm as cover and the symbols of laws as camouflage. The investigation stretched for weeks until an off-duty sheriff's deputy in Wyoming was pulled over by a man in a white SUV impersonating an officer. The suspect, 37-year-old Leland Gaines, was arrested. The search of Gaines's apartment in Cheyenne revealed the mind of a predator obsessed with the illusion of power. He had a collection of police scanners, replica badges, and trucker CB radios. His laptop contained meticulously organized folders. One labeled Routes, detailed remote highways, noting cell phone dead zones and typical patrol schedules. Another labeled Drivers contained surveillance photos of truckers, including Victor Ree, along with their regular schedules. Gaines, a former security guard who had been rejected by multiple police departments, had decided to create his own twisted form of law enforcement. His confession laid bare his methodology. He would monitor CB radio and scanner traffic, listening for truckers in distress, reporting bad weather or mechanical trouble. He would then descend on them, the perfect imitation of a savior in a uniform. They always opened the door, Gaines told investigators, his voice devoid of emotion. When someone thinks you're a cop, they don't question it. They're programmed to comply. He had heard Ree's call to his dispatcher about the deteriorating conditions in Deadfall Canyon. He saw his opportunity. He followed Ree, waited for him to pull over, and then approached with his emergency lights flashing. When Ree opened his door, Gaines incapacitated him with the stun gun. The presence of Janet Howell's truck had been an unexpected complication, but Gaines, ever the actor, simply maintained his role, even giving her a nod of acknowledgement as she drove away. He took Ree to an abandoned hunting cabin deep in the wilderness, a place so remote that help was an impossibility. There he held him captive. Forensic evidence suggests Ree was alive for nearly 2 days before he made a desperate attempt to escape. Weakened and injured, he didn't make it far before collapsing in the snow. Investigators linked Gaines to 3 other unsolved cases of missing truckers across the region, all following the same pattern: drivers vanishing from remote locations during bad weather. Leland Gaines preyed on the vulnerable, but his true weapon was the trust we place in authority. The case sent a shockwave through the trucking community. The trust but verify protocol became standard, calling dispatch to confirm the legitimacy of any officer in an isolated area before opening the door. For the drivers who still navigate the high mountain passes of the northern Rockies, the story of Victor Ree is a somber lesson. It's a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous thing on the road isn't the ice or the snow, but the friendly face in a uniform, the helping hand that isn't there to help at all, the flashing lights that aren't signaling safety but the beginning of a nightmare from which there is no escape. Section 5. The Whistler's Mile. The I-10 Killer's Signature. A serial killer's signature is a deeply personal, often bizarre ritual. It's a calling card left for law enforcement, a psychological fingerprint that separates their work from random acts of violence. For the investigators hunting a predator along the sun-scorched Interstate 10 corridor in 2011, the signature was as baffling as it was chilling. It wasn't a symbol carved at the scene or a specific method of disposal. It was a child's toy. A small plastic whistle placed carefully in the hand of each victim. This simple object turned a series of brutal murders into a terrifying mystery, and the unknown assailant into a ghost known only as the Whistler. His first recognized victim was Darren Wilkins. On July 8, 2011, the 36-year-old trucker pulled into the Ocotillo rest area, 80 miles east of Tucson, for a mandatory break. The next morning, he was found dead in his cab, slumped in the driver's seat. He had been expertly strangled with a thin wire garrote. Robbery wasn't the motive. His wallet was full of cash. Nothing was missing from the truck. The only thing out of place was the small yellow plastic whistle clutched in his right hand. It was a detail so strange, so out of context, that investigators didn't know what to make of it. An isolated, bizarre murder. 3 weeks later, 150 miles east in New Mexico, it happened again. Elena Vasquez, 42, was found in the sleeper berth of her truck at the Lordsburg rest area. The cause of death was identical: strangulation with a thin wire. Nothing was stolen, and in her hand a small blue plastic whistle. The chilling coincidence couldn't be ignored. A joint task force was formed. This was the work of a serial killer, a predator specifically targeting long-haul truckers on Interstate 10. As detectives dug into cold cases, they found him. 7 months earlier in El Paso, Texas, a trucker named Peter Krause had been found dead. His death was initially ruled a heart attack, but the autopsy noted unexplained bruising on his neck. Re-examining the case file, investigators found a note that had been dismissed as insignificant. A small green whistle had been found on the floor of the cab. The Whistler had been hunting for months, his macabre signature unrecognized until now. The killer was a ghost. The wire was standard picture-hanging wire. The whistles were mass-produced toys. No DNA, no fingerprints. He was a phantom moving through the transient world of truck stops and rest areas. The break came from the place he felt most comfortable: the hunting ground. A night shift cashier at a truck stop in Las Cruces, New Mexico, remembered something odd. In the weeks before Elena Vasquez was murdered, she'd seen a man in a white panel van approaching lone truckers in the parking lot. He was trying to sell them some kind of personal security device. The cashier, Melissa Torres, found the man so suspicious that she had jotted down his Arizona license plate number on a napkin and stuck it in her wallet. That single intuitive act of caution cracked the case wide open. The plate led to Raymond Mercer, a 47-year-old former security system installer living in Tucson. His record was minor, but a background check revealed he'd been fired from his job for erratic behavior and inappropriate comments to customers about their safety. He was a man obsessed with the illusion of security. Surveillance was established. Agents watched Mercer make regular trips along Interstate 10, stopping at rest areas, just watching. They followed him one night to the Picacho Peak rest area. There, they watched as he slipped out of his van, wearing gloves, and attempted to quietly gain entry to an occupied truck. They moved in and arrested him. The contents of his van were a confirmation of their worst fears. A bag filled with dozens of plastic whistles in a rainbow of colors, pre-cut lengths of picture-hanging wire, and a notebook. The notebook contained detailed observations about rest stops along Interstate 10, noting which had security cameras and the frequency of police patrols. It also held a crude map, marking the locations of the 3 known murders, each annotated with a colored dot corresponding to the whistle left at the scene. His methodology, which he later confessed to in chilling detail, was a twisted exploitation of a trucker's natural caution. Posing as a security consultant, he would approach lone truckers, offering to sell them a cheap anti-theft device. It was a way to start a conversation to gauge their vulnerability. The device was a prop, a modified car alarm remote. Most truckers turned him down, but he only needed one to be interested, one to open their door to him for a demonstration. Once inside the sanctity of the cab, he would strike, using the garrote with cold efficiency. The whistles, he explained with a disturbing lack of emotion, were his signature. A sick, twisted joke. A reference to the idea that in the lonely expanse of the highway, no one would hear them whistle for help. Further investigation of his home computer revealed a document titled Rest Stop Protocol. It was his operational manual outlining his victim selection criteria. He targeted drivers who were alone, in rest areas with low overnight traffic. He used a handheld scanner to detect CB radio transmissions, specifically avoiding truckers who were in communication with others. He sought out the silent ones, the ones least likely to be immediately missed. Investigators eventually linked Mercer to 5 additional unsolved deaths of truckers across the Southwest, all previously attributed to natural causes. Raymond Mercer was a methodical, patient, and prolific killer who hid in plain sight. He turned the one place a trucker should feel safe, their own cab, into a tomb. The case of the Whistler serves as a horrifying reminder that evil doesn't always announce itself with a roar. Sometimes it approaches with a friendly offer and a cheap gadget, and sometimes the only sound it leaves behind is the deafening silence that follows a whistle no one ever heard. The open road is a paradox. It's a symbol of freedom, of escape, of the classic American dream of heading west into the sunset. But as we've heard tonight, that freedom comes with a profound vulnerability. The very thing that draws people to a life on the road, the solitude, the independence, is the same thing that can make them a target. The stories of Martin Owens, Edward Crane, Howard Keegan, Leland Gaines, and Raymond Mercer are not just tales of individual monsters. They are a reflection of the darkness that exists in the periphery of our civilized world, in the blind spots and the dead zones where society's safety net is frayed and thin. For years, I've been fascinated by these stories, not just for their chilling details, but for the lessons they hold. The most powerful lesson, I believe, is about the nature of intuition. Think of Franklin Weber, who felt something was wrong with the stranded motorist at Cactus Creek and refused to open his door. Think of Ella Corbett, whose habit of photographing her rig, a habit born from caution, captured the image of a predator. Or the cashier, Melissa Torres, whose gut feeling about a strange man in a white van led her to write down a license plate that would bring a serial killer to justice. In a world of GPS and dispatchers, we sometimes forget our oldest, most primal safety feature. That quiet voice in the back of our head that says, something is not right here. These stories are a powerful reminder to listen to that voice, to trust it. They also show us the incredible resilience and compassion of the human spirit. Men like Curtis Hoffman, who broke protocol to save a family from a blizzard, or Nathan Reed, who stood his ground against hijackers. These aren't just stories of victims, they are stories of heroes. They remind us that for every predator who uses the road for evil, there are countless others who uphold its unwritten code of mutual aid and protection. They are the ones who flash their lights to warn of a hazard ahead, who stop to help a fellow driver with a flat tire, who create convoys for safety through the lonely nights. Ultimately, the highway is a mirror. It reflects the best and worst of us. It reflects our interconnectedness and our profound isolation. The next time you're on a long drive late at night and you see the distant lights of an 18-wheeler in your rearview mirror, don't just see a machine. See the person inside. A person who is the keeper of 1,000 stories, a silent witness to the secrets the asphalt holds, and maybe, just maybe, offer a silent thank you. Because they are the ones who brave the darkness so the rest of us can live in the light. Drive safe, stay aware, and never ever ignore that feeling in your gut. It might just be the thing that gets you home.